So Tonian and Golan asks, need some advice, paste wax versus oils for the saw plate, what works best, and what products. So what I wanted to do is break this down into lubricating the saw plate and also rust prevention, which are really the two key things that you're probably looking for. So when it comes to lubricating the saw plate, I find that paste wax actually works better because it lasts longer, but the oil does still work and it is actually a cheaper option. However, you've probably seen in a number of my videos where I just use a little paraffin wax candle and simply rub that on the side like this, and that actually lubricates the saw pretty well as well. And most of the time I'm going to go for this because it's just quicker and easier and I don't have to wait for something like the paste wax to dry. And so that is my option there. So when it comes to rust prevention, I think that something like the 3-in-1 oil actually works better. Now, main reason there is that the 3-in-1 oil is actually designed to inhibit rust, and that's why I like the 3-in-1 oil for that. It's cheap, inexpensive, easy, quick to apply, and it does prevent that rust. Versus the paste wax in that condition, where I find the paste wax, when I put it on there and it's dry, it does tend to attract dust to the saw plate a little bit. And although you do have that barrier, I do find that that waxy barrier doesn't last that long when it's got moisture up against it sometimes, or if you've got a lot of dust attracted to it, and it can still cause a little bit of rust with that on there. So I actually find the oil better for that and the paste wax better for the lubrication. However, both are fine for each process, to be honest. I've just found one is slightly better than the other. So now what I thought I'd do is actually break down some of the pros and cons, and then I'll show you how I actually use both these products to apply it. The pros and cons here is the 3-in-1 oil. We'll go through the pros first. So 3-in-1 oil, it's cheap, readily available, at least where I live. It's quick to apply. If you're just using an open rag or a rag in a can oiler like this, it will actually remove a lot of that dust and stuff off the surface. So that's a pro there. And another pro, which I already mentioned, is that 3-in-1 oil is designed as a rust inhibitor. If you actually read the bottle, and I don't actually have my bottle here because I filled up this instead, a vintage oiler can, it does say rust prevention or rust inhibiting as part of its properties. So that's just something to be aware there. Now, the cons here is you have to apply it quite frequently for it to especially lubricate. When it comes to the paste wax, you can make your own, which is great, like my homemade one here. I'll leave that link down below for you guys if you're interested. Essentially, it's just linseed oil and beeswax, so it's pretty simple to make. And it is a little bit more expensive to make, because you've got to combine the two together. It takes a little more time to make. Paste wax takes a little bit longer when you're trying to use it, just because you've got to put it on in a thin layer, let it dry, and then buff it off for its properties to really work well for lubricating and even rust prevention. So you do need to let it dry first to a touch and then buff it off. The only disadvantage that I forgot to mention with the oiler or oil is that if it's not in an airtight container, so if you just leave this rag in a can oiler out and you've got warm temperatures, it does evaporate extremely fast, which is very irritating. So what I do is I've just got this old vitamin container, and I actually just leave it screwed down like that, and it does help to prevent it evaporating, but it does still evaporate, which you don't get with the paste wax. And so I tend to away from the 3-in-1 oil, especially in a rag oiler like this, because it just dries out too fast in the warmer conditions here in Perth. And so in the winter it's fine, but I think in the warmer Australian conditions you're better off with either a rag in an airtight container, or just keep it in an oiler like this straight on a rag and wipe it on the side if you're going to go down the 3-in-1 oil route. The paste wax route, other than the more time, there's not much to worry about there. It does work well, but it does take longer. And so for lubricating, I think you're actually better off just with a candle, because it's just very, 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 very quick. So I already showed you how I apply the candle. That's pretty simple. If I've got a rag and a can oiler, that's very simple as well. So I'll just show you. You just come in, wipe it over the surface like that, and you're good to go. This is actually dried out again. There's no oil there, but that's why I try to avoid this. If you're just going to use a rag, something like this, you just squirt a little bit onto the rag, or if you've already got a rag impregnated, you can just wipe over the surface. The thing to remember when doing this is you actually want the thinnest layer of oil that you can get on there. So you want to wipe any excess off. You don't want any sort of excess loose sitting on the surface. You kind of want to put it on there and buff it off. And so it's just leaving that very thin layer to do its job. Paste wax, on the other hand, let me just grab another piece of rag here. So you're getting a little bit of your paste wax on here. Once again, you don't want too much. And you rub it on the surface like so. Pretty straightforward. Let it dry and then really buff it off. And then it leaves it smooth to the surface and you're good to go. But you do need to make sure it dries. And so very, very thin layer is what you want to put on there to limit that drying time so you can get back to work quicker. Now, there are other oils that you could use for this other than 3-in-1 oil, which would be Camilla oil, which is a Japanese oil for preventing rust that they've used for, I don't know, thousands of years as I understand. So I think that pretty much rounds out this video. So if you've got any other ideas for rust preventative measures, paste waxes, 3-in-1 oils that you use, or any other specialist products, do leave them down below, because we'll be able to help everyone out with this sort of conundrum or question between paste wax and oil, and maybe some other products if we can throw them in there. So do leave that down below. And until next time, do leave any other questions that you might like an answer to, and I'll endeavour to get a video out, and so you might feature on the next Your Questions Answered. Bye for now.